In my coaching and consulting practice, I often get asked, what are leadership traits for managing conflict? Perhaps you're a new leader looking to build the skills that will help you grow professionally. Or maybe you're finding yourself constantly frustrated about how to manage conflict on your team or in your organization. If you're looking to build leadership skills that will help you navigate conflicts in your organization, this video is for you. If you keep on watching, I'm going to share 4 common traits that great leaders bring to managing conflict and 1 common pitfall you'll want to avoid. First, great leaders see conflict as a sign of organizational strength. So I think in our culture, we often think that conflict means something is going badly, someone has done something wrong, something is off. But the truth is, nothing could be farther from the truth. Because in fact, whenever you bring more than a single person together, one of the signs that people are being real with each other, one of the signs that people are putting their full selves forward is that there will be conflict. Because all conflict are differences between people. And so a really well-run organization actually has healthy conflict. And so a good leader does what they can to avoid shaming conflict, to avoid shaming those who may bring up differences or problematizing conflict as it shows up. Instead, they work really hard to create an environment where healthy conflict is a sign that the organization is working well. But of course, healthy conflict on its own is not necessarily a good thing, because the second important piece here is that a really good leader capacity builds their team to actually have the skills to handle conflict. So what does that mean? It means a few things. 1, investing in the kinds of skills-based training that employees need to handle their differences. So whether it's engineers or doctors or lawyers or physicists, right? Most people in their professional training have not gotten skills for handling conflict. And truth of the matter is, it's not something that comes naturally. There are best practices. And we know from research that when you share those best practices with people and when you provide them training, guess what? They get better. But that in itself isn't enough, because once you've given them the training, they need ongoing support. Sometimes that's in the form of one-on-one or group coaching. But you know what? That's also not enough, because a really good leader, as part of their capacity building, is also ensuring that the organization has a set of systems and processes that are designed to help handle the conflict well. So what that might look like might be a mediation process, or that might look like having an organizational ombudsperson. So in terms of providing systems, it might mean having some very clearly designed mediation programs or an organizational ombuds, and making sure that people know that when they're in conflict that they can't handle on their own, that there's some people and some places that they could go to that can help them resolve it efficiently. Third, organizational leaders create psychological safety for everyone in their organization. So psychological safety is a concept that is developed by Amy Edmondson of Harvard Business School. And the idea is there safety within an organization where people feel like they can bring forward different or conflicting viewpoints and not be isolated, ridiculed, or otherwise pilloried. And what we know is that when that exists within an organization, it's going to make much better decisions. So the other thing that psychological safety does is it helps guard against something called groupthink. So groupthink is when 1 or 2 people put forward an idea, and then there's the sense that in order to be a good group member, you have to agree with that idea. 4, really good leaders lead by example. So what that means is that they themselves have invested in their own skills of conflict handling, meaning that they are good listeners, that they demonstrate curiosity, that they're empathic, and that they ask questions. So I'm going to share with you a story involving one of my colleagues who had been a part of a big organizational meeting. The original point of this meeting was to work through a number of substantive questions facing the organization. But in a short amount of time, the conversation had gone off the rails a little bit. And folks were sharing stories of not feeling heard, of feeling even discriminated against by dint of their race or their gender. And the head of the organization was quiet most of the time. He wasn't interrupting, and that was good. But at the end of what honestly was a very painful 90 minutes, where for the first time, a number of people who had often been silent in the organization had shared why they had been silent, the organizational leader basically said, "Thank you very much," and then said, "Seems like we have 10 more minutes, so let's move on to the real reasons why we are supposed to meet today." This move just was a jaw dropper for everyone in the organization because it demonstrated the leader's deep discomfort with conflict. There was no acknowledgement of the serious issues that had been raised. There was no acknowledgement of frankly, the courage that people had in putting forward their concerns. And then it was almost a tin ear to suggest that with 10 minutes to go, after frankly, many people were completely exhausted, to say, let's move on to the real reasons why we're here. Lastly, and this is the thing you want to avoid if you're a leader, and again, this will sound easy, but it is really hard to do, and it's to avoid wielding your organizational power. Because oftentimes, when there's a conflict and you're in charge, it's easy to just say, this is how we're going to do it. In fact, sometimes people are coming to you, they'll say, solve this because you have the power. You are the decider. The danger in that, first of all, is that instead of training your people in good conflict handling skills, you're training them to cop out by coming to you. Moreover, we lose the value of lots of wisdom when you use your power to resolve the conflict. Let me share a story from Barack Obama's book, The Promised Land, where he talks about how he often settled differences that happened amongst his advisors. He knew that because he was the president, that by dint of just him being the decider and holding this high office, that not all ideas, not all views would necessarily come to the fore because people would be sussing out what he thought and might be inclined, even at a subconscious level, to echo his own ideas. And so his way of handling that, whenever he saw some policy differences, would be to say, there's a lot of differences here, so I'm going to step out of the room, and I want to encourage all of you to have an honest and robust discussion on how we should think about this, and then I'd like to come back and hear what you've decided or what you've concluded. So what he was doing there, right, is because he was highly aware of the power he wielded as the president, he was creating space, different policy considerations, to get ample airtime in the room, not influenced by his power. So wherever you land on how President Obama was in terms of making policy decisions, what we know for sure is that really good leaders create the space for different viewpoints to come to the fore, and they hold back from wielding their power. So if you want to continue to grow as a leader, keep watching this next video where I teach you how to have a difficult conversation with your boss. And I'd be incredibly grateful if you would subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, and hit like. Okay, you know you want to learn how to have that difficult conversation. Keep watching.